I had a chance to see the interaction of all my grandkids and how they one day were going to take over what you and I are doing today. And so that was my aha moment. I had them all together. I had a chance to see it. I said, there's a story here because they made the story. I didn't make it. They made it. I just was able to verbalize it.
Hey, this is Dennis Consorte at Snackable Solutions, and I'm here with Gramps Jeffrey. How are you, Gramps?
I appreciate you inviting me, Dennis. I'm doing great.
That's wonderful. And before we get into the small business talk that we always do on Snackable Solutions, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your personal mission. Why do you go by Gramps?
Well, my latest book came out. It's a children's book called I Don't Want to Turn 3. And it's a true story based on my 6 grandkids. Living this past year because of the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 in isolation. And I got to tell you what a treat. They all have completely different personalities. The book is based on how these kids interacted and how the one who was a star, Jordan, who was 2 turning 3 that particular day, how he was taught how to take responsibility. The real question in this book, and I guess it's a real question for all of us, whether we're small businesses, entrepreneurs, or even in large businesses, at what age do you begin to take responsibility for your actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? I'm a baby boomer and I got plenty of 63-year-olds who still don't take responsibility for their actions. And so that's really the idea of the book. It's a chance where these young kids learn the difference between me and us and sharing. So that's what I've been doing lately.
That makes good sense. And when I think about how I grew up, I'm a little bit younger than you, not much. I think I actually have more gray hair than you do. And growing up, I remember we used to ride our bikes with no helmets. We used to play outside until it was dark. We used to play outside without parents around. We didn't have to worry about someone calling child protection services on us. I feel like part of that resulted in some of us being more able to take risks. And I feel like that's an important skill set when it comes to entrepreneurship. Is that what you're seeing as far as younger people go? Are you seeing any difference? And how is that impacting entrepreneurship among the next generation?
See, I think this generation coming up, these kids that are 1 to 10 years old, the newest generation, have the shot of being the best entrepreneurial generation that we have ever had in this country. And I think it's a combination of a couple things. One is obviously they're exposed quite early to the electronics, to their iPads, to information. They're getting all that much sooner than we ever did. Part of the thought through my book about I Don't Want to Turn 3 is comparing what was life like when I was growing up versus how these kids are growing up now. As a baby boomer trying to understand this, my parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, son, go over there, turn the channel for me. I was the remote. That's how we grew up. Now, these kids are growing up in such a fast pace now where they're getting all this information so quickly that they will change this country. And that's why it's so important. One of the missions of my book is I want to get the older generations more involved in influencing these younger generations, because we got to have a balancing act. They have to have a balancing act between what they're learning online, between what we as older people have learned through the wisdom of all these generations that we've gone through. And that's very important to me, is for us as grandparents to get involved, to bring along, because this is going to be the best entrepreneurial generation that we have ever seen.
That's great to hear. I hope you're right. And one of the things that caught my eye with you was, and I don't know if it was this book or another one, but you had mentioned that you got the attention of Arianna Huffington. How'd you get on her radar?
Well, my first book is called The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. That's this book right here. I don't know if you can see it. Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. And I wrote this book because in the business world, I started a couple companies. One of the companies I started, we took public, and it's an internet company It became the premier business to business site on the internet where we sold in case quantity to small businesses all around the world, shipped in all 50 states, about 44 countries. Our customer base were the moms and the pops who are surviving and thriving as the chains. We carry all kinds of products at wholesale and closeout prices, so it gives you a chance to compete with the big guys. So what was happening as we were building this business, and I was getting calls from our customers all the time saying, how do you do that? How do you do this? So I decided to write a book. And so that book is a 15 chapters of how to open and run a business. So, it's a chapter on how to hire people, where to find them. It's a chapter on real estate, a chapter on finding products, a chapter on marketing through the internet, another one on marketing through traditional channels. So that's where all that came from. And Arianna Huffington read my book, and she asked me to become a contributor to the Huffington Post. So I've written over 100 articles now for the Huffington Post on all kinds of subjects, such as small businesses, entrepreneurship. But half of the articles are about nonprofit organizations. Reason being is because we were so dominant on the internet with keywords, with thousands and thousands of keywords and phrases that were organically ranked. When Katrina hit, if you remember 20 years ago in Louisiana and Mississippi, all these nonprofits were looking for products to help the people. They came to us for underwear and socks and toothpaste and toothbrushes. When they opened up the trailers, they bought all the kitchen supplies and the bedroom supplies and all the things you need for the bathroom. And so all of a sudden, it opened up to us as entrepreneurs that, hey, there's a whole market out there that's underserved. The nonprofits were becoming to us because they could buy more products to stretch their dollars so they could help more people. So we got very involved into the whole nonprofit. A lot of my articles are about nonprofits and how we as a society really have got to help, whether it's the elderly or the homeless or the veterans. It's part of our mission as entrepreneurs to make sure that we help others and to help, again, the whole goal is to make this country stronger and better, and through entrepreneurs and small businesses. And we've got to be able to help the underprivileged.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And you mentioned Katrina, and I remember that. I remember a lot of the stuff that happened around it. And we're in a similar time now, only it's been extended over the course of almost 2 years. There were so many bad outcomes from the COVID lockdowns, and there were also some good outcomes. You mentioned new markets. Do you see new markets popping up now because of what we're going through today?
Well, I think what COVID did for the business world is it helped accelerate us into what we should be doing. If you step back and think, take social media. Okay, 10, 15 years ago, there was no social media or nobody was really involved into it. We as business owners, we would use traditional ways to get customers into our stores. With the shutdown with your stores, and you can't have customers coming in, social media evolved much quicker than it probably would have because of COVID, because that is the way to attract customers. That is the way to communicate with people, a lot different than the old traditional ways. So COVID accelerated this. We would probably be here in another 5 or 10 years, but we're here now. So that is the thing that has happened. So anybody in the business world has really had to adapt. This is not the old traditional. This is not what we learned in college on how to open a business. This is a whole different world that we have got to be able to flex with.
I agree with you. And one of the things that the lockdowns resulted in was the workforce became much more remote. And I agree with you, this was just an acceleration of the inevitable. When it comes to small businesses, let's say 5 years from now, what impact does that have on them? How much should they be focused on having a more remote workforce versus thinking about doing business the old way?
Oh, I think it's here to stay. I mean, think about how many Zoom calls have you been on? I just got the big traveler on Southwest Airlines. They just sent me my yearly report, and I was doing so much more traveling 5 years ago than I am today, 10 years ago. So your whole lifestyle has changed. And it's going to continue. We're looking at a lot of office space that may be open. So there's going to be a dynamic change in that. But I traditionally, and again, I grew up in the last 10, 15 years in the internet business. I was always against having people work from home. I thought that we all had to be together, make decisions, look at things, and because you had to turn on the dime in the internet business. You had to make a decision that day to implement it for tomorrow. Much different than traditional advertising, where you come up with an idea, it takes 3 months to get it out into people's hands. So this whole thing, traditionally, I had always said, no, nobody's going to work from home. We're all going to be here because we've got to use our brain trust to do that. Well, again, this COVID accelerated that you can do the brain trust through Zoom. It's not as much fun, it's not as personable, but you can still get it done. That is going to be a shift. Now, obviously, there's plenty of businesses that can't happen, the grocery stores and things like that. But there's a plenty of other businesses that are maybe internet related that can do that. So, yeah, it's going to be a change. I mean, the latest thing I've heard is it's the younger generation that doesn't want to go back to work. The ones that are in their 30s and 40s, they now have experience that they can get as much done at home. They have a different kind of quality of life. Why not? And so that's what's going to happen. So, as an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to start dealing with it and figure out how you're going to use it to your advantage.
Yeah. And when you wrote your book, Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart, you had some secrets on how to beat Walmart. And I'm curious, today, do the same ideas apply, or would you do things a little bit differently?
The same ideas apply because anytime you're dealing with large organizations, they have blind spots. They have places that they just can't do well in. They do great in lots of other things, but they just can't do well in. I mean, take a look at the evolution of retailing today versus 10 years ago. There are some stores that are closing. There's still plenty of stores that are open, but there are plenty are closing. But what's happened is this energy has gone online. Think about how many, and just in Amazon alone, the million people that sell products on Amazon alone, they weren't around doing this 10 years ago. This is a whole new generation, whole new way of doing business. I mean, the greatest thing is, one of the hottest businesses today are these venture funds that are buying up all these sellers that sell into Amazon, have unique products, and are combining them to become another company. So this is just the evolution, and we're talking retailing, but it happens in other industries too, that it just keeps going. It just changes the way that it looks, and you've got to adjust to that.
Yeah. And I do believe that Amazon is a great place to be for many online retailers. I also have concerns that when you sell your products on there, they aren't really your customers, they're Amazon's customers. What are your thoughts on how Amazon should fit into the big picture for an e-commerce business?
Well, let's learn from Walmart. Okay. And back in the 70s and 80s, all independent, manufacturers and so forth really wanted to get into Walmart because they were the ones that were growing. So there were thousands of companies here in the US that over that amount of time, 50 to 60% of their business was actually flowing into Walmart. And Walmart got smart. They said, hey, we can do this ourselves, make a lot of money, and get cheaper prices. So that's when Walmart went overseas and started to knock off many of their major suppliers with the products that they were doing on themselves. This country is littered in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s with thousands of companies that went out of business because they put all their eggs into one basket, and Walmart just said, oh, I'm buying from somebody else next year. And there's no way to make that up. Well, that same kind of action is happening on Amazon at the same time. Amazon has the ability, especially with the data. There's nobody that is any better than them with data. And they know exactly what is hot, what kind of products they need. And look at the expansion of the Amazon label on all these products. So that's where you have to be very, very careful when you're selling on Amazon is, are you going to get knocked off? And I think that's one of the reasons why these venture capitalists are having such great luck in buying businesses, because people realize, after I do $2, 3, 4, $5 million on Amazon, they're going to knock me off. So let me sell out to these guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know so much about business and particularly small business. It makes me wonder about your pivot from writing books about business to writing children's books. Was there some moment in your life that created some transformation where you said, you know what, I need to change what my mission is?
I was affected by COVID, just like everybody else. I had this time where my heart and soul was in business, and all of a sudden we were not doing business anymore. I had a chance to see the interaction of all my grandkids and how they one day were going to take over what you and I are doing today. And so that was my aha moment. I had them all together. I had a chance to see it. I said, there's a story here because they made the story. I didn't make it. They made it. I just was able to verbalize it.
Yeah. Okay. And if you had advice for parents of this upcoming generation in terms of instilling more of an ownership mindset in their kids, what would you say to them?
We have parents and grandparents, we've got to be the role model. When I say role model is little kids reflect everything that you do. Okay. If you're on your screen and you're on your phone and you're doing that, I can guarantee you that the little kids are going to do that. I mean, think about it. If you're talking to a 2, 3, 4 year old and you say a cuss word, I can guarantee you that 3 to 4 times that day, they're going to repeat that back to you. There's a way to get that to not happen is as soon as you say a cuss word, start talking about things they like, bananas, dinosaurs, raspberries. They may not say that to you, but you've got to be the role model. Okay, so what does a role model do? Well, a role model has got to teach these kids that reading is how you learn. Reading is good. Okay, and why is it good? Okay, well, there's several benefits if we sit there and we read to our kids. One of them is bonding. Okay, now I'm a grandparent, and when I was raised, my uncle lived up the street, my grandmother lived 2 blocks away, and we were one big happy family. But in today's world, this doesn't happen like that anymore. Taking me for an example, I've got 2 grandkids here in Scottsdale, Arizona with me. I've got 2 in Austin, Texas. I got 2 in Orlando, Florida. I mean, we're all over the place. So you don't have that kind of bonding that you have, at least the generation that I grew up in. So we have got, as parents and grandparents, have got to teach these kids to read and sit there and read with them, because it does cause bonding between you and the child. And you need that, because 2 and 3 and 4 year olds, they're not going to call you when you're not there. You got to make sure that you call them. We've got to do this with kids because it supports listening skills. You and I both know as we get older that listening skills is the number one asset that we can have, because the more we listen, the more we learn, and the more we can communicate. So that all begins when these kids are 2, 3, 4 years old, is you've got to teach them listening skills. And you do that through reading the books, because when reading a book, you're also teaching them cognitive and language development. There's plenty of words in these books that these kids may never have heard, so it gives you a chance to explain it to them. And the other thing that we as adults have got to do in making this as part of the routine of children is that the attention span. Little kids bounce off the wall. They go, but if you get them in your lap for 10, 15 minutes, it teaches them to have an attention span. And again, all those things are traits that we have as we grow older and go into business.
Okay. So reading, listening skills, and having a better attention span. And by serving as a role model, the goal is to help the kids develop these skills further, which will help them in business.
Absolutely. Yep, you nailed it.
Okay. My superpower is trying to summarize what people say, but I don't always get it right. All right, very good. So now this brings us to my favorite part of this interview, our snackable solution. Why don't you tell the audience, Gramps, what your snackable solution is and how they can go about it?
My snackable solution is how to play to your weaknesses. Well, let me explain what I mean by that. As you become an entrepreneur and small business owner, you got to really, first of all, you realize you can't do it all. You wish you could do it all, but you just can't. You just don't have all those strengths. I'll use me as an example. My passion is marketing and sales and merchandising. That's my passion. But if you talk to me about accounting and CFO, I start to shake. Because if you put me in a room for a day to kind of figure out all the accounting and stuff, I'm going to walk away there like I haven't accomplished anything. So I know that that's a weakness of mine. So One of the first things I've ever done when I opened up a business is find someone who was passionate about accounting and a CFO kind of a person that was completely opposite of me, but it was a compliment to me. Another thing that I learned early on is even though I love marketing, I'm not a graphic guy. I can't even draw a straight line. So I've got to find people around me that are really into graphics and drawings and insightful things when you think about marketing. That's something else that I need to do and surround myself with. So again, as you're thinking about playing to your weaknesses, you got to know what they are. Because otherwise, if you try to do the things that you are weak in, it's going to take you all day and you're going to waste a lot of time. So it makes sense to identify those things as early as you possibly can.
Okay, that makes good sense. So, how do people find you online, Gramps?
You can go to my site, grampsjeffrey.com, or feel free to email me. I love to continue conversations at grampsjeffrey@gmail.com. My book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, and also the other book, The Secrets of Retailing and How to Be Walmart, is you can find both of those on Amazon. So you can buy them on Amazon, or you can buy the children's book on Barnes and Noble and a bunch of other sites around so forth. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me because I'd love to continue this conversation.
Awesome. Gramps, thanks so much for your valuable information. This was really enlightening. I enjoyed talking to you.